Hello, everybody. Let me add my guests. Over here, Doug.
Hey.
Oh, I'm supposed to do my intro like
Yeah, we talked about this.
for the podcast because this is a podcast. So here will be the podcast intro. Hello and welcome to Open Mind UFO Radio. I am your host, Alejandro Rojas, and I am joined by my good friend, Douglas Smythe. Welcome, Mr. Smythe.
Good to be here. Alejandro. Thanks for having me.
So some of you may recognize him. He is the co-host of What is Doug Reading, where essentially we talk about what Doug's reading for the week. It's usually some weird occult sort of thing, and it's usually a lot of fun. So that's a Thursday show. We didn't do one next week, but that's because Doug was...
We didn't do one yesterday. We didn't do one yesterday.
What did I say last week?
I think you said next week.
We didn't do one next week, which is true. That's true.
That is true. Actually, yeah, that is true.
But which reminds me,
always right.
I do have other. I'm not always right. I have to a couple of corrections I have to do for the show actually. But we didn't do one this week, yesterday, because Doug was preparing for the next show, which is just going to be that great. I don't know what you were doing. You couldn't do one this week, but I couldn't really either.
Yeah, but I do. For people that are watching, we will be still covering synchronicity.
Yes,
folks.
synchronicity.
This will happen. I'm horrible with these cameras, but yeah. So be prepared. It's coming.
So we can plug that. So this coming Thursday, noonish, we usually do it. Live right on YouTube. Anybody can come join us. You don't have to be a Patreon member or anything. You can come join us and watch me and Doug discussing these things. Now, it's not a UFO show. A couple people have complained. What is Doug reading? But because UFOs are my industry, that's what I do a lot of. And you have an interest. UFOs come up, but maybe they will, maybe they won't. Usually they do.
They're part of my business too, to a certain extent. So there's that. I mean, for the most part, this is like reading Rainbow meets the paranormal. And if you're looking for a good book to read at any time, it's probably good to tune into one of these, and maybe we can interest you in one, because I only read like interesting ones. I swear, I promise. It won't be a waste of time.
Some interesting ones, that's for sure. But since this is your first time on the podcast, kind of introduce who you are. Like, what is your company and all that jazz?
Sure. My name is Douglas Smythe. I'm from PhoenixShaving.com. And simply put, we're a male grooming company. However, we incorporate a lot of...
You don't do the grooming.
I do. You got beard care as well.
People?
I don't personally groom people. I don't personally shave men at this point in my life, but that's this week. But yeah, and a lot of our stuff is UFO themed, paranormal themed. We try to include a lot of that actually into the PAA Phoenix Shaving universe. So these themes come up on our sales pages, in the label designs. There's ongoing stories, there's sagas, there's soap trilogies even. It's more than just shaving is what it all comes down to. And it's, again, if you're looking for something different and interesting, and you feel like you've been shaving the wrong way or hate shaving, I can help you.
I know that may sound weird and gimmicky, but that's your genuine interest, and this isn't just to sell the products. The products are actually really good too. Like, I use them; they're good soaps, straight razors, everything you need to shave with
traditional shaving
and stuff. Yeah,
we're trying to push people away from the cartridge razors, and those are just. I have a whole cartridge razor conspiracy I could go into sometime, but we're trying to get people away from that, back to traditional forms of shaving, which are better for you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a ton of UFO news. Some of you have already been itching to ask. So we'll get to that. But one last thing real quick about your products before we go away from it, is that you're also the mad scientist. You don't go to like Alibaba, that Chinese website, and say, hey, this seems like a good flavor or a good smell, I'm going to order that. You actually design all of your scents and soaps yourself.
Yes, we build our scents from the ground up for the most part, and product formulations are all ours. We're artisan soap makers and perfumers at the core of it all.
Great. Okay, so let's see. People in the chat. There's Mary and Varys from Germany. Hello, Germany.
Guten Tag. Guten Tag.
Somebody wants to talk about Nap on Rogan. Let's see. Someone wanted to say hi. Hello, Dirk Bone Steel. Any opinion on the new MUFON head? Yes, I have an article on that. So we'll get all into that sort of stuff. But let's do references, and I'm going to start off by saying something controversial. This is going to be a fun show because it's always fun talking to Doug, but we've got some heavy material in this show. So there's a lot of bittersweet going on. But yeah, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell are on the Joe Rogan show, I think today. And to be honest, that doesn't excite me that much. I'm not a big Joe Rogan fan, so it's not like he's a scientist or we have a lot more exciting people talking about UFOs that we'll be talking about in a minute here. So I'm sorry if that lets people down, which I'm sure it will, but my brand is being honest and open with you all, and that's my honest feelings. Do you have any thoughts on that? And you can definitely differ in opinions. Of course we do. But what do you think?
The only time I ever really watched that show was for Elon Musk, and that was about 5 minutes of it I watched. I don't care for Joe Rogan that much. And I have nothing against him personally at all. It's not my brand of podcast that I listen to, really. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just not my I mean, it is definitely my brand, but it's not my flavor, if you will. So
yeah.
Never really
but Jeremy and George, I love, of course. George Knapp is one of my major heroes. So
yeah, Coast to Coast. I'm a huge fan of Coast to Coast. I can't get enough George Knapp. So I mean, nothing against George.
So if anything,
Jeremy, I rode an elevator with Jeremy one time, I think. And
oh, you did at the Congress?
Yeah. No. Where was it?
Alien Con?
Was it Alien Con LA?
Was he ever at an Alien Con?
Was
Both
it not Alien
Doug
Con?
and I vended, I was a speaker at the Alien Cons, but Doug and I was also vendors at Alien Con, and actually that's how we originally met, right? The first Alien Con.
Our origin story.
Yeah, the origin when they go back, when they write the legend, when they do the graphic novel.
Yeah, get it right, guys. Get it right.
That would be a good one.
The graphic novel.
But let's get into the other news of the week that I had planned to talk about, and the very first one we'll talk about is and this is bittersweet, and I'm going to actually share my screen here to show you why it's bittersweet. It is sweet because Open Minds TV is back, baby. So I'm going to admit to you, there will be a little bit of rockiness in the next coming, I would say, week, as I'm finishing up transitioning, moving the website to a new hosting service so I can have control and beef it up and make sure that the website is running smoothly. But I have kind of configured it, changed it a bit. It's going to be definitely more news heavy, and it is, more towards our credible UFO news and information. That's what we do. But here's the bittersweetness, which is that we have to launch with this first news story, which is Mutual UFO Network director arrested for solicitation of a minor. And this was no hoax. This is no conspiracy. But essentially, here's what they wrote about it. And we only found this out a couple days ago, July 14th, because the Huntington Beach Police Department posted this right here, mugshot, on their Facebook page. And they wrote at least this paragraph here about Jan in particular. On July 3rd, detectives contacted a male by the name of Jan Harzan, who is the MUFON International Director. After Harzan solicited sexual activity from a detective he believed was a 13-year-old girl, the suspect solicited the minor to meet for the purpose of engaging in sexual activity. And then the suspect agreed to meet the supposed minor. Detectives were there to take him into custody. At the same time they released this, they also sent out a press release, apparently, that was at least picked up. It was picked up by Vice. MJ Banias, who's been on this show, wrote the Vice article with another Vice writer. And then Newsweek also picked this up.
Jeez. Does he pronounce it Jan or Jan?
Jan.
Jan.
So you said of course, I've met him a lot. I've known him for many, many years. Back when I was, one of the directors for MUFON, I knew him. It's really unfortunate. And here's the other part. And somebody asked me that, what do I think of the new head of MUFON? And that's what this article is about. And I'm very critical. And here's why I'm critical, because I used to do PR for this organization. In fact, I used to be the official spokesperson. And I think that they've made some major blunders. So here's the adult rest log. And here we go. So here's essentially what MUFON did. And mind you, immediately when this occurred, and I often do this, at least with MUFON, I do this with SCU for, to be completely transparent. And that's about it. Sometimes with some friends or people who ask, at least in the UFO field, but I'll send them an email saying my opinion on how to approach this issue is X, Y, and Z. So despite my email, this is what they wrote. In light of recent events, Jan Harzan has been permanently removed as the executive director of MUFON. Effective immediately, he will no longer serve any role in the organization. David McDonald, executive director emeritus, meaning he was executive director for a period in the past, and a member of the MUFON board of directors will now assume the duties of executive director. MUFON remains committed to its core mission, the study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. This mission is greater than any one person or member of MUFON and supersedes all the other considerations. We will continue to move forward and focus on our mission statement. Okay, here's my problem with this statement, and I think it's a big one, is I feel, and I'd love to hear your opinion if I'm being too harsh, when something like this happens, a normal response is first to condemn what happened, condemn the allegations, the alleged heinous crime, and then to move on and say, we've moved someone. I mean, the way this reads is, we're not so concerned about what he did, but UFOs got to go on. We're more concerned about UFOs than we are that our director allegedly committed this heinous crime that he was arrested for. I think that reads poorly right from the beginning, personally. Am I being too harsh? What do you think, Doug?
No, I think you're right. I mean, well, that's what we're used to anyways in 2020, especially, is a big apology first, or a drastic overcorrection.
Right.
It's just none of that.
Yeah, to make sure people understand this is not okay with our organization.
Yeah,
and of course
this is not us.
And they may think that's a given, but it's not a given. And here's why. Here's the other problem. First of all, David McDonald, who's taking over again. Like I said, he's done this in the past. Great guy. I love the guy. Very personable, funny. Hopefully he'll do a great job running it. I think, which we'll get into, Jan had made a few major mistakes in the past. But here's the problem. So this guy, the new director, there was a 2015 Vice article about him. And the article was called Raunchy Tales from the Pilot of a Mile High Club Plane. The subtitle reads, Pilot David McDonald makes a living flying folks around while they get it on the back of his plane. So, and here's what I wrote. The story goes on to interview him, and there's some kind of like shaky stuff in there. Not that David McDonald has done, but that people want to do in his plane, or apparently have done. There's a story about a dog.
It includes a dog, yes. Yep.
But anyway, so here's my problem. My problem is, okay, so somebody gets busted. Your executive director gets busted potentially for being a pedophile, something creepy and pervy. And you're replacing him with a guy whose business I think could very easily be labeled creepy and pervy, at least pervy. Yeah. So, I mean, it gives the impression your organization is ran by creepy, pervy old guys.
Yeah. Gee.
And I don't think they are, to be honest. I mean, I know a lot of these people. I would
some
not
of the best
have
people
ever
good folks.
Yeah. And I never would have imagined Jan would have been doing something like this. And I never would imagine any of these guys would be. They don't come across really as creepy and pervy, but certainly on paper, they're giving that impression. This is really weird too. So Billy Cox wrote an article about this when back in 2012, when McDonald was taking over. And he had some quotes, and this is in the Miami Herald. We talked about Billy Cox a lot. He's great. But this is weird. One of the quotes he got from McDonald was about another controversy at the time, which is they started doing background checks on their field investigators.
Smart.
Maybe warranted. Yeah, everybody's like, maybe they should have done that for Jan, but this wouldn't have come up, of course.
Yeah.
But this is what McDonald said, which is really interesting. He said, we weeded out a number of criminals and scam artists and at least one pedophile. Can you imagine sending a thief or a pedophile into someone's house? I don't even want to think about those liability issues.
Right. Right. What he tacked on the end there. We don't want to think about those liability issues. It's like, no.
So another Newsweek article that you can see here is they wrote about the problems with racist comments. So there have been
recent, right?
Fairly recent. Yeah. 2018. John Ventry, the state director for MUFON in Pennsylvania, made some racist comments. Jan said, oh, there's not much we can do about people's Facebook comments, which of course is a weird statement in today's world when people are getting fired left and right for racist comments on their social media.
Yeah.
So eventually, because people said they were going to quit, he said he fired Ventry. He wasn't in charge of anything anymore. In fact, he led some people, including, I feel, many to believe that he had let him go completely. It wasn't with the organization.
Right.
Well, a scientist named Chris Cogswell, who I've also had on this show, he joined MUFON. In fact, we talked about this in early 2018. Well, the symposium comes around. John Ventry gets a hold of him and says, hey, I'm running the symposium. I need your information for your talk. Chris Cogswell's response was, I'm resigning from MUFON. You told me this guy was kicked out. He obviously wasn't. Now you have him running the symposium. I'm out of here. So Newsweek wrote about this, but then even more recently in the past few weeks, this Kem Pfeiffer guy, who is a state director for several states, has made some racist comments. And I mean, this comment right here reads really poorly, and I'd love to hear what you think about this one too, is regarding Black Lives Matter. Holy S, explicitive. I would have picked their cotton for them if I thought it would end this BLM racist madness.
It's unacceptable. I mean,
no, it is.
It's unacceptable. I mean, you're right. Old white guys is what I'm getting from all of this that don't care. They don't have compassion and they can't relate to anyone else. And that's troublesome when it's MUFON, You
Exactly.
You got to understand what people are saying, what they've been through, especially you got to be empathetic. I mean, and compassionate towards people. That should be the number one thing about being having any involvement with MUFON. And here these guys they just don't get it. And why is that?
I don't know. That's the question. So I do know somewhat. The board has not addressed either of any of this at all. When it comes to this last racist event, Jan said, I don't see anything racist on his Facebook. When people had asked him what. And so these people with these racist comments, first of all, are tolerated. One, that shouldn't be the case. And there's no consequences, at least unless extremely forced, for their actions. Why? Here's my translation as to why. John Ventry gave MUFON a lot of money, and he's a very vocal person. These, people are bullies. And Jan was very bullyable. He was not the type of leader who sets the pace. He's the type who, if you complain and you bully him into something, you could get something done. And I'm not the first to say this. Many people knew that of him. He was a nice guy, just not the type of guy. Well, that he was easily bullied. And I think that's what's happened, that they're afraid of losing these people because they help, and they are afraid of these people in general. So they've been bullied into this leadership at MUFON. There's a lot of people at these different state levels that are racist, that are bullies, that shouldn't be in leadership positions for an organization like this. And I think that the board or these people think, oh, people don't know that we're not like that. They don't know that. And the message you're sending out is you are like that. You're the grouchy, racist, sexist, old, creepy men that run this organization. And that's the impression you have to fight against, especially when that's not accurate. And I don't think that is accurate. There are so many good people in MUFON, a ton of them. That we both have attended, we're friends with the Arizona MUFON people who are just incredible.
Wonderful. Yeah, great people and diverse. But evidently that doesn't reflect MUFON as a whole. And I think this is a great wake-up call for MUFON. It needs to be more diversity in there, especially in leadership positions. And it needs younger blood.
Yes, that too. And you don't attract younger blood. Like I said I just imagine with all of this going on, racist comments, creepy, pervy stuff, to be a young woman interested in looking into UFOs.
Oh yeah, total turn
or
off.
To be a young colored person, or total turnoff. It's a total disconnect with understanding your audience, or the room, or the audience you want.
Or lack of understanding. Yeah, exactly. I can totally see that. I totally get it. And something needs to change drastically, especially, and maybe it's this time that we're in right now that's snuffing all this out. But I mean, we just went through the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter. I mean, we're seeing this. Clearly it's time. And MUFON doesn't seem to still get it, that they need to take responsibility for this.
And there are some comments here. So Dana said she'd like to be an investigator, and MUFON could possibly still do good work, but they need to do better. True. She also said, to be honest, I feel like only people who are already interested in UFOs know about MUFON. I think that there's a lot of truth to that too, which is, in my opinion, a failing on their part in the last few years as far as
huge.
And then so those are, and then Cameron says MUFON should end. It's old and outdated. I don't know. It's really tough. We'll see what happens, but
I think there's a lot of potential for MUFON still. I think there's still a lot of good to do. It just needs a revamp and maybe a facelift here and there. It needs younger. It's like classical music to a certain extent. Getting younger people interested in classical music has always been a challenge.
Yeah,
it's like that with MUFON. MUFON. I mean, God.
And that's a kind of good
things I could do with it.
Classical music was created by a lot of old,
aliens,
white, creepy men, creepy, pervy men too. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, so let's look at other news going on out there, because there is other important news. And to do that, we will look at. I'm going to change what I'm sharing here. Ba, ba, boop, boop, boo, doo, boo. This is my sharing tab music. Because this is exciting. We're going to talk about Marco Rubio. Oh, watch this. Marco Rubio is not necessarily my favorite topic, but watch what happens when I do this, Doug. You watching?
I'm watching.
Okay. Not this, but this. Look at the balloons.
Oh, yeah. Balloons.
Every time I go to my profile.
Oh, you know why?
Balloons. It's because Twitter loves me. It's because Twitter loves me so much.
Wait, but this has only been happening today, correct?
That is true. Are you debunking my theory about Twitter loving me so much?
That's what we do. That's what we do, man, my friend. See, I'm perfect for MUFON. I have what it takes. They need to put me in a leadership position there.
They do. They do. So what is your theory as to the balloons? Mr.
I think it has to do with your self anniversary.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's my birthday.
It's his birthday today, ladies and gentlemen.
It's my birthday. Badoo. Some people already noticed that. They're like,
"Did they?
It's your birthday." But anyway, this is so Marco Rubio, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The Senate Intelligence Committee right now is asking the military, many military organizations to produce UAP reports. They're like, hey, from unidentified, the New York Times article, everything to the stars has been telling us. They've been bringing us Navy witnesses. And now the Navy's admitted you guys have been investigating UFOs. You've been telling the public you haven't been investigating UFOs. You are too. And you haven't been telling us about it. And we're the Senate Intelligence Committee. You better produce some reports that are not just full of classified information, but information you can share with the public. And Rubio's ahead of this guy. So this guy in Florida, Florida CBS, Miami CBS, he, Jim right here, DeFede, I guess is his name. He asked Marco about UFOs. And so there's a video online, and this is on my Twitter here. You can see that. Marco Rubio's answering it, and he took on the question. He did not shy away. One of his quotes is, the bottom line is, if there are things flying around your military bases and you don't know what they are because they are not yours and they exhibit potentially technologies you don't have at your own disposal, that to me is a national security risk and one we should be looking into. And the way he said it, and or when he said this, it was kind of funny because he shrugged like, duh. And, you know, I've always felt that. It's been one weird thing that I've felt, and this is what got me involved with all this, is that if there are things flying around and you don't know what they are, wouldn't you want to know? As a MUFON field investigator myself, I'd call the FAA, I'd call, the Air Force. They'd be like, nah, we don't care about that stuff. What? That doesn't even make any sense. That seems so irrational. There's someone walking into my house with flowers.
Ooh, do you know them?
Do I know them?
I feel like those are the gatekeepers, though, that are answering the phone at these places. They're there for a reason.
Well, I think they really, and in some cases, though, they really just didn't care. It's too weird. And you're like, oh, I don't know. But I mean,
yeah. I guess when I say gatekeeper, I mean that too. I mean, there's the uninitiated gatekeepers, if you will, is what I mean. They don't need to know that. It's on a need to know basis, and that's something they just don't need to know about. And
yeah. So
I suspect that, anyways.
I think you're right. So big story. It's kind of cool because one of the articles I'm working on, given my interview with Chris Mellon recently, is how motivated are these Congress people to get answers? And I think they're pretty motivated. And I think this comment from Marco Rubio is evidence of that. So I think that's terribly interesting that they're all of a sudden, like, it's okay for them to be like, hey, tell me more about those UFOs. And which is so strange because it's only been like that in the last few years. Wow.
Yeah. I'm suspicious of this.
Oh, you are? How so?
I mean, why the sudden interest? Why is it okay to talk about this publicly now? Why the New York Times article? I mean, like, what is going on? Do they think we're ready now? I mean, like...
Well, I think that the term "they" is where you go astray, my friend.
Oh, you're all about the "they" thing.
Because "they" is a loaded term, and when you need to qualify "they," and the "theys" are
the government
often. Yeah, but the government. That's okay. Great point. But the government is not the government. I mean, the government is a bunch of different organizations that all work separately from each other, very compartmentalized, lots of stovepipes, which is essentially, all these different people working on their own thing, which is the whole problem the Senate is having. So I don't think there's the they. Who are the they? And that's a great question right there. And the they are Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo. Essentially, Luis Elizondo investigated UFOs, found there's something to them, a story that we've seen over and over again. So, for instance, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, skeptical about UFOs, looks into them, sees that there's something legit there. Nick Pope, skeptical, works for the government, looking in, sees that there's something there. Luis Elizondo, same story. And he wanted to get that information up. He finds Chris Mellon, someone who's plugged in big time, worked for the Senate Intelligence Committee, worked at a national level with the Congress people, had insight into the black projects, says, I'm going to help you. We're going to get this up the ladder. They don't. They can't get it up the ladder. Nobody's listening to them. So they hatched this plan to go out into the public, sell this story, force the government to admit that they've been into this topic. And there's a lot of people that take it way more seriously than anybody believed, which they do. They get the New York Times story. They get unidentified, forces the Navy to come clean and say, okay, yeah, we're backing our dudes. This is all legit, which then sets up that kind of legal framework for the Senate to say, hey, you're admitting it. You have this program. You haven't told us about it. Your job is to tell us about this. You better start talking. So, I mean, that's kind of the scenario that gets us where we are now. There's certainly people on the inside who are pushing against this. Pentagon Public Affairs, another article I'm working on, has been heavy on the pushback, so much so that they've lied. They've given false information about Luis Elizondo and his actually doing this stuff. Right. We have the Navy being more pro, pushing this along. So we've got all these factions inside, some trying to hold it back, some trying to push it forward. So I think it's just really complicated. I mean, not necessarily.
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm wondering why this is what makes this one more credible than any of the others in the past that have tried to come forward and then been discredited.
I think that
that's what I'm concerned about. Is like, why are they? And when I say they, the certain figures in government, why are they allowing for this? It seems like it's an allowance now. Like something's going on.
I think there's enough. For instance, here's my experience in this field. There's always been this concept of they won't let you get information out. They won't let you do this. They won't let you do that. I'm not the type of person to care about what they allow or not. So what I found is, especially like in that position as spokesperson of MUFON, or in this position, and I would say, and I'm not even saying this to toot my own horn, but I would say, because I've got a list on my blog, Open Minds and my articles have been referenced in mainstream media more than probably a lot, like a whole lot, dozens and dozens and dozens. How does that happen? By feeding credible information. Everybody wants credible information to demonstrate their interest in this field, but that's not what they're given typically by UFO researchers. They're given dubious, fringy, wild things that pseudoscience that often cannot be substantiated or just isn't credible. And nobody's going to put their neck out there. So what are you going to do, especially the media? If it's not something they can substantiate as credible, which gives them a pretty good scoop, they're going to make fun of it. And so every time, that's the secret of our success has been to give them credible information they can truly stand on. And not a lot of people understand what is credibility. You really need expertise. It's hard. But in this Nimitz case, there's an abundance of it. We've never had as many military witnesses, jet fighter pilots coming forward on the record, along with documentation and, government insiders who have investigated. So that's kind of the perfect storm that has come together. We really haven't had that so much to really spearhead, but no doubt also cooperation from higher ups, leaders, especially in the Navy in this case, that have been wanting to step forward, and some of Lou's colleagues who were shy at the beginning when he came out, but have been warming up to committing to pushing this all forward.
Right. Well, I'm curious to see where it's going. We're definitely living in exciting times when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, amen to that, brother. So what's the next news piece? Oh, so this is another exciting one. So much exciting news, Mr.
It really is.
Mr. Doug. So here's the next one. Good buddies over there at the Drive. So this story is not just from Tyler from the Drive, the War Zone, where Tyler Rogoway is usually the guy writing these. In this case, it's Brett Tingley. But he had help. And this story is, newly released FAA documents give unprecedented look into Colorado drone swarm mystery. This is such a weird story, and this is great. So they did this investigation, and shout out to Douglas Johnson, who got these documents. Douglas Johnson is also part of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, which I talk about a lot because I'm part of that organization, helped start it. Great group of science-minded people looking into this topic. But he got a bunch of documents via FOIA regarding these drones that were in Colorado, a bunch of them. They made news stories a while ago, and people didn't know what was going on. You may be saying, Alejandro, what do we care about drones? Get it together, man. Quit being such.
Well, this was like a mothership, right? This was a mothership and then smaller drones.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So they're describing all of these bunches of drones. A lot of these witnesses say these were drones where one of them was a mothership, like 6x6, with a lot of smaller ones flying around it. Drones don't have motherships. They were saying that at some instances, they were flying for 2 to 3 hours continuously. Some of these people who have seen them are law enforcement. And this is a great paragraph here. I'll just read this paragraph. Even top FAA officials invoked the term UFO on at least one occasion. On December 31st, 2019, in an email from FAA Administrator Steve Dixon to FAA Chief of Staff Angela Stubblefield, Dixon observed that not too long ago, we would have called these UFOs. And Stubblefield said, yep, now everything is a drone. Which kind of makes sense.
Disinformation, you think? Or, I mean...
No, I don't think it's disinformation, because I would do the same. Like, for instance, I do this all the time. I saw a satellite, but, and the reason being is that I can't say it's not a satellite, but it did some strange things that satellites don't normally do. In this case, they're saying essentially that. We think they're drones, but there are some things that they're doing here that drones don't do. So they're essentially admitting here, we're saying drones, but really we don't know what the heck they are. They're UFOs. That's terribly interesting because, flying in the air for a couple hours.
Yeah, I want that battery pack.
20, 30, 50 of these things at one time. In some cases, they said all of them were 6 feet by 6 feet. So pretty large for a commercial drone, that's for sure. You and I both have a drone, pretty awesome ones too. And
same drones, yeah.
They're 6 inches by 6 inches.
We have drone clones.
Drone babies.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. I mean,
does this parallel? Honestly, now I think about it. What about the Washington D.C. incident of 1952? That happened, I think, this week, actually. Back in
Washington.
Yeah.
In Washington, D.C., 1952, UFO incursions over the Reagan National Airport took place throughout June and July. In one instance, in late July, the Project Blue Book investigators heard that they were being seen over Reagan National Airport. They raced to the scene, took over the control tower, witnessed the objects themselves, scrambled jets. As before, when jets got to the area, the objects took off. Although one jet fighter said in a previous instance, he chased one of them and just outmaneuvered him. Very similar to the Nimitz incident, very similar to many, many incidents documented by governments around the world. So yeah, you're right. But this is the
anniversary. This is the anniversary this week, right? I mean, it started on, I think it was the 17th or somewhere around there.
It started in June. 14th? And there were other places they were seeing these. It was actually Ruppelt, the guy who wrote the book, who gives the best details on this, called it the UFO summer. There were, I guess, a lot of UFO activity in the summer of 52, which is the beginning of Project Blue Book. All of this helped create Project Blue Book. Of course, there were prior UFO investigations to that started in.
Well, they got the information. From what I understand, Project Blue Book got the information later. Like they learned about it from the newspaper, I think, right? Like
no, they were there. They did learn from the newspaper, but then actually, it's kind of a funny story. Ruppelt was out there in DC, but because of bureaucratic bumbling, he was sent home back to Wright-Patterson, Chicago, even though he wanted to stay in DC because they were in the middle of this flap. So when Project Blue Book took over, even though he was the chief, he wasn't able to be there. But he still documents what he heard from everybody.
What a one to miss.
Yeah. John Smith is asking, so what's the breaking news? I'm not sure if you've been watching the show. If not, you'll maybe need to rewind, but we've covered quite a bit of breaking news, and I think we have more breaking news too. Right? Let's see.
We can make some up if we
yeah.
We don't do that on this show.
Yeah. Not yet. Just kidding. So, okay, are those the big 3 stories that we had? Oh, no, there is one more story. This one more story is the DIRDs.
Yes.
So, essentially, just something that's kind of interesting. There were, when it came to ATIP, what was actually OSAP. So maybe I'll go over that whole thing too. I'm trying to look for the acronym to DIRDs because I can't remember what it is. Maybe you look that up while I explain this to people?
Sure.
Ooh, thank you. Look at Doug's research face there when he's got his. But anyway, the OSAP, which was the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Application Program. That was a program that Harry Reid started that was funded by the government in the Pentagon to research really Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of paranormal activity. Religious factions inside the government didn't want all of that research because they thought it was demonic. So that's when Elizondo and others decided, that's when they brought on Elizondo about this time, and to focus on military UFO cases. And they had figured there's no way they're going to allow us to keep doing this other stuff. So let's just keep focused on military UFO cases. And that's what they did. They called this program ATIP, and that's how it continued. But one of the things that OSAP was supposed to do was create a set of documents. And these documents, they hired a bunch of scientists to write a lot of documents regarding various different topics. And did you find what DIRD stands for?
I did, yeah. Defense Intelligence Reference Document.
There you go.
DIRD.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So George Knapp at MysteryWire.com just released a few more because we haven't seen them all. And a lot of these, refer to different types of cutting edge technologies. Now, we've heard from the insiders like Elizondo that these are technologies that they relate to UFOs, properties of UFOs. If you've seen the show Unidentified, he calls them the 5 observables. But that's the sort of thing that is in these. One of them does refer to UFO cases. This one was called the Clinical, Medical, Acute, and Subacute Field Effects on Human Dermal and Neurological Tissues. And in that, they kind of talked about the effects UFOs have had on people medically. But these new ones that were released are, let me read the titles: Metallic Glasses, Status and Prospect for Aerospace Applications, Material for Advanced Aerospace Platform, and State-of-the-Art and Evolution of High-Energy Laser Weapons. So, makes sense, right? These are exotic materials being used for aerospace applications, the future of the materials used for these sort of things. So cutting edge material technologies, and of course, lasers. Any good UFO is going to have a laser,
of course.
Or else.
And that's where you win me over. It's like cults and jumpsuits. You got jumpsuits, I'm in.
Yeah, jumpsuits, and which reminds me of the Space Force. This is another piece of news. I haven't seen their jumpsuits, which are probably pretty cool. But the Space Force, they're calling their people. If you've watched Space Force, the television show, which I think is pretty funny, they called their people spacemen, even the women, which was kind of a running funny thing.
In the show?
Reality,
in the
show.
Okay.
In reality, they're calling them deltas, which is kind of interesting. So
why not alphas?
I don't know. They're a delta. I'm not sure about the logic behind it.
Going straight to okay. I'd like to know what that.
So you'd be a delta if you had that cool jumpsuit and laser gun.
Okay, as long as it looks like the others, like Lost style, you know. Those are good.
And there was somebody said, "Dird, their own Douglas is really defensible."
Well, I like defensible rather than defensive.
But they say a smart dude.
Shucks. Thanks, Mark.
So that's kind of interesting. Another Space Force story out this week too is that they're talking about training for military exercises on the moon, as if which is another scene from the TV show. Actually, that was pretty funny. But they're going to be training for I know. That they're going to train if they're at a moon base and they have to attack another moon base. So that's kind of funny.
I don't even know what to say about that.
Yeah.
I am struggling. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
I know.
Have they already been doing this? I mean, are they already there, do you think? I mean,
no, I don't think so. I think they're still hiring. So...
But the Navy,
are they already?
About back in 1991 wasn't? I mean, originally the talks of the Space Force goes back almost 25 years now.
Oh right? Yeah, well, we had a Space Force. We had Air Force Space Command, and this group is essentially the same group. It's just now in its own branch. It's public. In fact, well, it was public before, but it wasn't as public. I mean, they didn't make a big deal out of it, but it's been around since the 90s, and it's kind of funny because. I would mention that to people. I love to put that in my talk.
Yeah.
U.S. Air Force Space Command. And people are like, what? You're not making that up? No. We had a U.S. Air Force Space Command.
I think George Bush Sr. put that into action, right?
Yeah. So, this is the same group. The concern has been, are they spending enough time and money protecting our satellites? It's a corporate thing. Everything's driven by corporations and big money.
Right.
And the U.S. corporations have way more satellites than any other country. But everybody's developing anti-satellite weaponry, and Russia and China have been very vocal about their efforts in these areas. So now everybody's like, protect our satellites. And, we do heavily rely on them. So that's kind of the impetus behind all of this is to spend more money on protecting our satellites. And we've got the Space Force for that. Now, the Air Force was saying, we're doing fine. We got this covered. But there were others inside the government who felt like, no, we need to spend more money on this. And so they created.
That was Donald Trump's idea, wasn't it?
Well, the name maybe, but because it went back and forth, they called it just Space Command for a while.
Right.
But the whole idea behind doing this was not his idea. He just made it happen. He did make it happen, though. So
and he claimed it as his own,
Yeah, he's kind of claimed it. That's true.
Kind of claimed
Space Force has a lot of history. He's a claimer.
Yes, he's a claimer.
So, in final news is the UFO Congress that the tickets are up now. So you could register for the UFO Congress. In fact, let me show people the website for that because we have a lot of great speakers already signed up. I say we, it is we, because I helped do this and it is my partner, my significant other, who you all know, Karen, sometimes shows up behind me in some of these shows. But yeah, the tickets are now open. It is going to be a live streaming event. It's going to be September 9th through the 13th. Here's Karen talking about it here. There's our little alien buddy who's actually behind me around the corner here. But let's look at the speakers. So it is live streaming. However, we have this really cool platform that's very interactive. It allows you as guests, actually, as soon as you get your ticket, you can get in there and start exploring and messing with stuff. Like you can create chat groups You can create chat like conference calls right in the app. So let's say, so you can talk, hey, if you have a group, if you're a MUFON group, you could say, Arizona MUFON, here's our chat group, and we're going to join and do a conference call to talk about, what are you going to go see, or what are you excited about, or hey, did you watch that talk? My favorite talk was this or that. You can even meet at lunch every day or something. So lots of cool stuff. And we have virtual vendors. Hopefully they'll see you in our virtual vendor area, Doug, and you'll be able to like do little shows. Like you'll be able to do a conference call where I'm like, I'm going to show off my products today and how cool they are and all my crazy UFOs, pictures and stuff. So we've got Nick Pope, we've got Stacy Wright, who's head of Arizona MUFON, and Marianne Robb, a good friend, police officer out of Gilbert, but she is also a field investigator. So they're going to be talking about doing UFO investigations. Travis Walton, I think we have every year. Brian Bender, so that's a rare one. I think he gave us a newer pic. Well, no, I don't know. Travis doesn't change.
Travis has looked like that for the last 40 years.
I know. This is a good one too. Chris Bledsoe Sr. A lot of people are really interested in him. Linda Zimmerman, always great. Adeep Prasad, our first time. He's a very interesting kid. David Marler. And I'm going to be interviewing David Marler next week for Den of Geek. We'll do a live stream like this so you guys can join us and ask questions. What's the big deal with David Marler? Where he's going to be talking about UFO burn victim cases. And he is an amazing researcher. He understands credibility. And what's amazing about his talks is he brings more credibility to these cases than you could have imagined because of his deep research. And he's going to be on Unidentified this weekend, talking about triangular UFOs, which is his expertise. So he'll be on Unidentified this weekend. We'll talk to him next week about that experience. Chad Lewis, Yvonne Smith, Tim Brigham, all different UFO researchers. Lori Rayfeld, she's a retired major in the Army who was actually at Rendlesham. She had a sighting before the famous Rendlesham Forest experience. She'll be talking about that, and I'll be emceeing as usual. So yeah, International UFO Congress tickets.
Is she British? Is she British or she? Okay.
She is an American.
Okay.
And then finally, some sad news. So I told you this would be a bittersweet show and some seriousness. Sad news is Marianne Robb, who you see there, her picture. She helps us with the conference and has for a long time. Her husband also helps, Don Robb, who was a retired fireman. You might have seen him running a camera at the UFO Congress if you were there. But unfortunately, he passed just recently, just about a couple of weeks ago. So I'm dedicating the show to Don Robb. He's a wonderful person, a lot of help, and the Congress is not going to be the same without him. So thank you so much.
It's very sad.
Yeah, but thanks to Don for everything you've done, and hope you're well wherever you are.
Yes,
but
thank you, Don.
That is the show. Let's see if you guys have any questions, get those in now. Otherwise, we're ending the show, and I'm going to read a couple comments. Some Dirk Bonesteel says, if some jerk blasts a few satellites, the little parts would destroy others for decades. It's a real fear. That's the big problem right now, is that that's why we have to be on top of testing. It's also a lot of diplomacy goes on with this because you have to convince other nations not to test. In fact, there's a famous test. I think it was either China or Iran. I think it was China, where they blew one of their own satellites to bits. And some of these pieces are now in orbit, the same orbit as the ISS, which poses a great danger because you may have heard, even a bolt, they travel at such fast speeds around the planet. It go right through the International Space Station and potentially through an astronaut. So it causes a lot of danger. So,
yeah, humans.
Some other guy, let's see, some thank yous. Hey, I made a reconstruction of Lori's sighting at Rendlesham. How cool. I made it with her personal help. That's so interesting. So Rodrigo, I can even show this. Hey, Rodrigo Viero, he's in here quite a bit. He joins us at the what's Doug reading too.
Yes.
A lot of times, but this is a synchronicity, Doug. This is a topic of our next show.
This makes perfect sense to me. Clearly,
well,
the universe is functioning through this show right now.
Wild. That is so interesting that you did.
That is
work
very
with her
cool.
to that is really cool. So thanks for sharing that. All right. There was no Reagan Airport. Yeah, no, you're right. It wasn't the Reagan Airport, but it was a Reagan airport. It was called the National Airport. But it wasn't
National.
called. Washington National. That's before it was called the Reagan Airport. So there was an airport there. It just wasn't called the Reagan Airport.
We're getting fact checked today.
Fact check me. Oh, that does remind me. I have a couple of corrections. So I did say in the past that AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, was a law enforcement agency and that they didn't get involved with intelligence or counterintelligence work. I was corrected. And I was corrected by a couple individuals, one through the website and one through Patreon. And at least one of these guys knows his stuff. He said, I even used to hire these people. And this is a guy I know was in intelligence. So I believe him. So I guess they did do some intelligence work. Also, I made a mistake when I talked about, the AFIO, when I talked about that with John Alexander. I was talking about how it has to do with these Wilson document things, about how John Alexander knew these guys who supposedly brought Wilson in, and it wasn't part of the AFIO. Colonel John Alexander confirmed with us, and he said he thinks he would have known if those two guys brought him in, but he doesn't think they did. Now, the argument was that the notes don't say they brought him in for AFIO, but for some other organization. These two gentlemen ran the AFIO, but they didn't bring him in for that. They brought him in for something else. I can't remember the name, but just a correction there as well. And the person, Craig, who corrected me on this, has been eagerly awaiting my correction. I apologize. It took me so long, but I actually wanted to get some more input from John Alexander on that, and I will do so and share that with you when I get some more information. May I post the link at Open Minds TV? Of course you can. Please do.
I'd like to see that too, Rodrigo.
Yeah, thank you. Mark says, I've heard Colonel Halt and Redfern. Dolan says there's been lots of anomalous activities at Bentwaters, Rendlesham for many years before and after the famous 80s event. May be the case. The hard thing is whenever a area becomes famous for something anomalous happening, you get a lot of people coming out of the work saying, I saw something anomalous. I saw something anomalous. So are there more anomalies there than other places? I don't know. I don't feel that we have enough information yet for that, but who knows? That could be the case. I think it would just take more research, I suppose. And you'd have to be sure and look at everywhere else,
That's true.
Like Doug's house is, Doug's a very eccentric person, but just because you have an eccentric person living in the house doesn't mean it's going to have more paranormal events happening there.
No, it does, man. That it actually... You can usually link the two together.
Yeah. More corrections.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. The timing seemed right. So I guess we're getting close to the end, right? I mean, this is it.
We're at the end.
Yeah. Folks, I hope to see you all next Thursday. What's Doug reading? Is that the name of our show?
Yeah.
For our next episode of that, please tune in. Remember, we're going to be covering Synchronicity, 2 books on Synchronicity, the classic. There's the camera. And a new one I just picked up about a year ago and really enjoyed. So that's my little plug.
Great. Good plug. And that's the end of our show. So be sure to check UFO Congress. Be sure to subscribe to our page. And Doug's got a page too. You're over there.
Check me out if you're interested in learning more about the history and tips and tricks on traditional shaving. I'd rather be shaving.com. Check out our show. And
one last question. Someone popped in one last question. What's the upshot of the Harzan fiasco? I don't know that there is an upshot. We'll wait and see. I hope there's some upshot somewhere. I'm definitely a silver linings type of guy. Unfortunately, I can't see one in this one.
I'll keep thinking it's just about another nail in the coffin, really. I mean, big changes need to happen.
But that's not a upshot. That's depressing still.
Yeah, you're right.
So I don't see one yet. Follow me at Open Minds TV on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, all over the place. Follow my personal stuff too, and UFO Congress also has a Twitter you can follow. I'm mostly on Twitter. What do you use? Mostly Facebook?
Instagram, Facebook.
I got to Instagram some more. Yeah, and I promised to Instagram some more. I've got some Instagrams on there. Go check those out. Fun stuff. However, that is all. And until next time, do you want to say it with
Shave on?
No, I say adios, muchachos.
Adios, muchachos?
Good
job. Y muchachas. Oh, it's my show now. Well, folks, I've been waiting for him to leave. You've been hijacked. This is a takeover. Am I really here alone? I'm here alone, aren't I? Oh,
you're wrong button.
Happy birthday, Alejandro.
I always push the close button instead of the end broadcast button. So this is the real goodbye. This time you are leaving as well.
Happy trails, folks. Adios, muchachos.